Alright, what's up everyone, I'm Faloki, and today I want to talk a little bit about Josh Gordon and him being resuspended by the NFL and what that means for the Seahawks and what it means for Josh Gordon. Now I'm going to assume that most people know the general situation of Josh Gordon, where he was put on the exempt list, he was indefinitely suspended for substance abuse and PEDs, but no idea really if he actually had any performance enhancing drugs or if it was just substance abuse. I mean, the NFL has been very vague. They have been very reluctant to put out actual details on it. And now, just recently, after coming back to the Seahawks for one day, he was put back on the exempt list, resuspended for an apparent setback in his substance abuse recovery. Now, of course, before we get into anything about football, the NFL, the Seahawks, I just want to wish Josh Gordon the best of luck. It seems like he's been a constant reoffender over the past few years, and he's had a lot of setbacks in this most recent suspension. So, you know, substance abuse is a very bad thing. It can be a really bad thing. It's important to kind of fight it and get it gone. But, I mean, Josh Gordon, he seems to be having a lot of issues. So, really, I mean, football is one thing. I can only assume he wants to get back out on the field and play for a team that's as good as the Seahawks right now. But, I mean, it definitely makes sense for Josh Gordon to focus a lot more on his health, because substance abuse is something that can really hurt him if he doesn't, you know, take charge of it and just get rid of it. Because substance abuse, I mean, it can definitely be really bad. And the NFL has been very vague about what substances he's been using. And I assume, you know, it's legal reasons why they can't put that out. But I really hope the best for Josh Gordon. But now let's talk about the football side of it. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is Josh Gordon's career. Now, Josh Gordon, he's no doubt a great player. He had some really good years with the Browns when they were absolutely trash. And when he came back to the Seahawks last year for the few games that he actually could have played for the Seahawks, he made some really nice catches. He played pretty well. He had some nice plays. He wasn't on the field too much, but when he was on the field, you could definitely see his impact. But, you know, it just really sucks that he won't be on the field this week. And, I mean, his career has been riddled with suspensions. He's missed a lot of games due to suspension, and when you look at the timetable of his entire career up until now, it's just absolutely baffling. In 2013, Josh Gordon led the NFL in receiving yards, and he only played 14 games. But then in 2014, he missed 11 games due to 2 suspensions. In 2015 and 16, he did not play due to violations of the league's substance abuse policy. In 2017, he was reinstated, but he only played 5 games for the Browns. In 2018, he missed the first part of the Browns training camp for mental health reasons, and then he was traded to the Patriots, and then he was suspended indefinitely by the NFL for violating the terms of reinstatement under the NFL's substance of abuse policy. He then left the Patriots and he was reinstated by the NFL, but he was dealing with a knee injury. The Seahawks still picked him up, and he ended up playing a few pretty good games. And then last year, of course, he was resuspended for PEDs and substance abuse. And I mean, now, as you can see, he just got off of it, and once again, he is resuspended for violation of terms of the reinstatement. Now, of course, most of the things on this list are bad for Josh Gordon's career. It's not even the fact that he's been suspended so many times, it's the fact that he's wasted so many years of his career. He is now 29 years old, and he was one of the best wide receivers in the NFL back in 2013. A young guy that could show that he was uber talented, he could do some great things on the football field, he just couldn't stay on the football field. He kept on getting suspended, and really, he couldn't do too much because of that. And it's really disappointing, because Josh Gordon back in the day, you know, you saw him on the Browns when they were absolute garbage, when they were trash, and he was still making plays. He looked great. And if you just kind of thought, if he could go to a team that could use his talents and not be the Browns, he would be so good. But then he just couldn't stay on the field. He kept on getting suspended, and it was just a really unfortunate situation for him, just over and over and over again. But, you know, maybe, I mean, he still has some years left in the tank. If he can get clean and stay clean and play the last 3-4 years of his career, maybe, if he wants to stay in the league that long, I mean, he definitely can. He's obviously talented. He came back to the Seahawks last year, played a couple games, and he made plays. But it really sucks to see that he's wasted so many years of his career. He's now getting a bit old when it comes to the NFL, and he doesn't really have too much to show for it because he's been suspended so much. But the main gripe that I have with this entire situation is the NFL and their reluctancy to give any info to, one, the public, which, you know, might be legal issues, so it makes sense there. But they really haven't been giving information to Josh Gordon himself, from what I've heard. When Josh Gordon was indefinitely suspended for that year before the NFL came out and just said out of nowhere that he could come back for Week 16, Josh Gordon apparently had been getting little to no information from the NFL. He didn't get a single timetable to come back until like a week or two before he actually could come back. They just kept him out indefinitely, never really made any mention of him. But Antonio Brown came back after having multiple charges, multiple things that he pled guilty to, a lot of bad public conduct. I'm not saying that Antonio Brown shouldn't be in the league, but Antonio Brown, when it comes to just how bad it looks for him as a person and for the NFL, I mean, Antonio Brown is much worse of a person to be reinstated than Josh Gordon, if Josh Gordon was only smoking weed, you know. Of course, the NFL has been very reluctant to put out information, so you really don't know everything about Josh Gordon's situation. He could just be smoking weed all these years and being resuspended and resuspended and resuspended, and now the NFL is just upset and they have a vendetta against him to keep him out of the league because he didn't follow the rules one too many times. But maybe, you know, the NFL hasn't really said it, but maybe, you know, he actually did take performance-enhancing drugs multiple times. Maybe he was doing harder drugs, which are even worse for him. The NFL is just trying to keep him away from football and keeping him out of the league as to not reward him. Like, we have no idea what's going on, and that's because the NFL refuses to give out any information. They refuse to give out timetables. They just keep on saying indefinitely suspended. And I think that's the thing that upsets people the most, is the fact that Josh Gordon, he came back. He had this like 2-week notice of, hey, he's going to be back week 16, and everyone was excited. But then, of course, after the first day that he comes back, the NFL says, yep, he's reinstated, but, you know, he's back out indefinitely. Doesn't give a timetable, doesn't say if he'll be back within a certain amount of weeks, just indefinitely. Everything just seems to be indefinite with the NFL when it comes to Josh Gordon, and it seems to me like they have a bit of a vendetta against Josh Gordon because, you know, at least Antonio Brown, he had all this stuff going on, but they gave him a timetable for when to return. They didn't just say indefinitely, and that allowed teams to want to sign him and want to pick him up and actually get some value out of him like the Buccaneers have been doing. But Josh Gordon, they keep on saying that he's out indefinitely and giving no information, which honestly, in my opinion, is really bad for Josh Gordon, not knowing what your future is when your employer won't tell you what your future is. And I mean, it's bad for the Seahawks, and it's bad for any fan that wants to see Josh Gordon play because no one knows anything about what's happening. But really, what does this mean for the Seahawks? Honestly, it doesn't mean too much. Josh Gordon would have been a really nice guy to come in as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. But I mean, we have some great players. We have Freddie Swain as a wide receiver 4, David Moore as a wide receiver 3. But the thing that upsets me here is the fact that the Seahawks, of course, when they were getting Josh Gordon back to open up a roster spot, they ended up releasing Penny Hart, who has been playing pretty decent. He's had some nice plays with us. But the thing is, they waived him. Now they wanted to get him back on the practice squad. Of course, they wanted to waive him, get him back on the practice squad while Josh Gordon was on the active roster. Now, I believe they're trying to sign him back to the active roster. But what I've been seeing is that Penny Hart would have to go through COVID protocols once again after only being gone from the team for 1 day. Like, if the team cut him to bring back a player that you said would be back, and then the NFL says that he's not going to be back because he's back suspended indefinitely, then you should let the Seahawks pick back up Penny Hart without having to go through like a week of protocols, because at this point, Penny Hart probably wouldn't be able to play if he did have to go through the protocols once again to be able to join back with the team. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me because he's been gone from the team for 1 day. If the Seahawks end up signing him back in the next day or two to the active roster, then he should not have to go through protocols because he's probably, you know, not been doing too much. It's not like he's going out and partying now that he's been cut by a team. He's not celebrating being cut by his team. Like, that was something that upset me because, you know, the Seahawks, they waived Penny Hart because they thought Josh Gordon was coming back. Next day, Josh Gordon apparently isn't actually coming back. So they want to get Penny Hart back because, I mean, he's a pretty good guy to have on the active roster, but he would have to go through protocols again. That really just doesn't make sense to me. But that's just one thing where it's like the NFL just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, you can't give a team 1 day, you know, waive a player and then bring Josh Gordon back, and then you take Josh Gordon away, then they have to sign another player to fill that roster spot. But you don't give them the ability to, because now anyone they sign is going to be a week away, even if they bring back a guy they literally just waived. But of course, that's probably just me being biased, and there's nothing confirmed about Penny Hart having to go through the COVID protocols if he is re-signed, but that's just what I've been seeing from a lot of different people, and that's just kind of annoying. But I mean, overall, this is definitely something that when it comes down to it, I wish Josh Gordon the best. I hope that he can recover from whatever substance abuse, you know, addiction he has, or whatever he's going through. You know, I hope he can get better, and I hope he can get back on the field, because Josh Gordon has proved that he can be a really good player. He just needs to stay on the field. He needs to not get suspended. And, you know, I am upset with the NFL's, you know, lack of information, reluctancy to give any information. But, I mean, I guess it makes sense. The NFL is doing what they think they have to do, and they're suspending him for what they think is just. It's just really annoying as a fan of Josh Gordon, as someone who wants to see him play for the Seahawks, just not being able to get any actual information about what's going on. Like, if the NFL came out and said, yeah, he was taking steroids every other day, for like the last 2 years, then yeah, it makes sense if he's suspended indefinitely. But they're giving us no information. Most of it has just been substance abuse. No like real description of what it was, but what he's known for is weed. So if it's continuously weed, then I feel like it's just a lack of information is what's annoying me. And then of course the Seahawks, waiving a player to get Josh Gordon on the active roster, and then Josh Gordon's taken away and they have to sign someone back. And if that player has to go through COVID protocols, even though he's only been gone from the team for 2 days, it's just kind of upsetting, this entire situation. But of course, the main important thing from this situation is that Josh Gordon gets better, he stays healthy, because football is a game. Football is obviously a sport that Josh Gordon wants to come back and play. But when it comes down to it, the most important thing for Josh Gordon is his health, and that should be number one no matter what. But let me know down below in the comments what you think about this situation. Do you think Josh Gordon will be back for the playoffs? Because it would have been interesting to see him week 16 against this pretty big game against the Rams, but we'll just have to see what happens with him and see if he actually is able to come back by the playoffs. But let me know down below what you think, like I said. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. Have a great day.